In the Chloe Smith interview, you can tell it's hard news by the setting. It has all sorts of pictures in the background that are political. For example, there's a picture of George Osborne holding a red briefcase, and that red briefcase indicates that the budget is coming. Every year, George Osborne and his team, who work for David Cameron, they make a budget for the year to say what we'll be spending on what and how much we'll be spending. So it's significant because it indicates that they're going to be talking about the budget or some sort of tax discussion. Paxman and Chloe are both wearing very formal clothing. They're both wearing suits, which indicate importance. And just overall sensibility. For example, if a minister was to turn up wearing jeans and a t-shirt, they might not be taken seriously. So in order to be taken seriously when discussing an important matter, they both wear formal clothing so that everybody watching knows that this is a very important situation that they're about, and a very important discussion that they're about to have. You can tell it's a hard news programme by the language that they use. For example, Paxman and Chloe both use very elaborate language. He says stuff like Treasury Minister and fuel taxes, and you can just tell that they're talking about very important things. Insert clip. This programme is a hard news programme. It's very... it's known for giving hard news, and Jeremy Paxman is kind of like the face for hard news. He's always been known to interview people about it and get facts out of people and important people from the government, just so that we, as the audience, as English citizens, know what's going on in the government, so that we're not confused about everything. So he does that job. He gets things out of important people so that the British public know what's going on. And without this show, there would be no hard news, because that's what this show is. It's a hard news show. It gives out hard news to the British public. Another reason we can tell it's a hard news show is because he asks key questions like, when were you told? And he keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, because she's not giving him any answers, so he needs to dig deep, and he needs to keep annoying her with it. Otherwise she will never answer, and that's how Jeremy Paxman gets his answers. He basically annoys it out of people, and it's just called being inquisitive and investigative, and it's a very good strategy, although sometimes it can cause the interviews to become quite combative, because the interviewee will get annoyed like Chloe does in this clip. With this interview, Jeremy Paxman he's very consistent with his questions. He keeps asking, when were you told, when were you told? And bear in mind, this is her first TV interview ever. He doesn't really care about her, he just wants to know when the decision was made, because he thinks that it was made that day. And that's what he's trying to find out. He wants to know for the good of the British public, because everyone was confused. And so that's what he's trying to find out. He's trying to find out when the decision was made final, and why it had only just came out that day that it had been changed. And he wanted to know if it had been decided that day, and it was just a quick decision, because maybe they'd made a mistake somewhere along the line, and that's what he's trying to find out. One of the questions in the previous clip that I showed, he's saying to her, well, you didn't agree with it in May, so what's changed in less than a month? What's made you change your mind? And he's being very suggestive, so he's basically saying to her, I know you're lying. And that's why he's trying to get answers out of her. He wants to know why she's lying, when was she told, and why had they changed the policy so fast, and why was it such a quick decision. So with that question, and he says to her, you didn't agree with it in May, and then he quotes her, and you can tell by her face that she knows that he knows that she's lying, and that's the exact reaction he wanted. Why didn't the Transport Secretary know about this yesterday? In what departments is the money going to be made up? Do you ever wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to be told today? These kinds of questions are, again, key questions or developmental questions. For example, when he asked her about the Transport Secretary, he's trying to kind of change the subject, but at the same time he's trying to find out, like, if it was made previously and not that day, why was the Transport Secretary not told? Because clearly it's about fuel prices, and the Transport Secretary should have known exactly when the decision was made. And they're saying that it was made within the past couple of weeks, but if it was, then why wasn't the Transport Secretary told? He then asks her about in what departments is the money going to be made up, and she doesn't really know the answer, and I think he asks this to kind of move the interview on, because if she had been told within the last couple of weeks, they surely would have discussed when, like, or where this money is going or going to be made up from. So that's why he asks that, because she would know. And if she was told that day, she wouldn't know, and she doesn't really know. So he's trying to catch her out and prove that she was told that day. And the other question he asks was about, he says to her, do you ever wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to be told today? And he's kind of just indicating that she's kind of a puppet, because they've clearly said to her, you need to go on this show and you need to say that you didn't know anything. Like, you got told a couple of weeks ago. And that's what he's trying to prove. He's trying to prove that she doesn't know anything because she got told to that day. So that's why he asked these kind of questions, to kind of catch her out. And he's being very kind of suggestive when he asks about her waking up in the morning, and because he's kind of saying, well, you're a little bit of a puppet because you're just getting told what to say all the time, and you're just getting told to listen and not say anything. So I think he's definitely trying to kind of wind her up and move the interview on so it kind of gets interesting. He then goes from suggesting that she's lying to giving facts that she's lying. He gets out his his papers and he says, well, it's going to cost this amount, but when you last said it was going to cost this amount, did you get your sums wrong? And I think he's being quite sarcastic there. And he's being quite combative because he wants a reaction out of her. He wants her to fight. But he realises that she's not, and that's why he's fighting her with facts now instead of just being suggestive, because you can't argue with the facts. And he knows that she knows that. But of course, she manipulates her way out of it because that's what she's been trained to do. To answer a bit of the question but not actually answer it. She just answers a little bit and then kind of follows it like a story. And that's why these questions are quite developmental and key, because if he didn't ask that question or say to her, basically, I know you're lying because here's the facts, she just would have kept lying her way through it. And he didn't want that. He wants her to give out the facts and when she was told, when this decision was made. So he had to get out the facts in order for that to happen. And he had to move the interview on so that that could happen. I think when the interview first starts, he is kind of calm. And as the interview goes on, he just gets more and more combative. And he can be quite rude, actually. For example, he says to her, is this some sort of joke? And she gets very offended, which is understandable. That's the kind of reaction he wanted out of her, though. He also suggests that she's told what to think, as I said earlier, about him basically saying that she's some sort of puppet. It's his tone of voice the whole way through. He's just got a very sarcastic tone of voice that would really annoy anyone. If someone was talking to another person in a sarcastic tone of voice, the other person would get extremely annoyed. He also says to her something about being incompetent, which is really rude. But again, he wanted a reaction out of her, and he got one. But that's just his way of getting things out of people, because he thinks maybe if he's a bit combative and a bit rude, he might get something out of them. So the impact of him being combative, it does make it very uncomfortable. The reason why he's combative though is to get answers. He wants to pressure her into it. He wants to corner her to make her feel uncomfortable, and hopefully she'll want to get out of that situation so badly that she'll tell him what he wants to know. It wasn't very effective because he did get some answers out of her, but he didn't get a lot. He didn't get what he wanted. She just basically told him what she was told to tell him, and he knows that, and he wanted to get her out of that, but it didn't quite succeed as well as he thought it would. He also asks loads of direct and single questions, and direct questions are very demanding. It's kind of like, you answer the way I want you to, please. Like, it's kind of forcing an answer out of you that you already know the answer to, but the interviewer already knows the answer, but they want them to answer the correct way. And single questions, particularly in this interview, is useful because the information is very heavy. It's very, like, if he was asking too many questions at once, the information that she'd be giving out might be a bit jumbled because she doesn't know what question she's answering. So single questions are definitely useful in this type of interview. In this interview, as well as basically every other interview that is done, he could be very good in the way he was asking his questions. He knew what he wanted to get and how he was going to get it. And he knew what to ask. Like, the questions I said before, like when he asked about the transport secretary, where all this money was going to come from, and stuff like that. He knew what he wanted. So he was asking very direct, single questions to get simple answers out of her. But then he also, I think, took the combative technique way too far at some points. When he asked her about being incompetent, that I think was way too far. He shouldn't have said that. I think that was quite unprofessional of him to be doing on a live national TV show, in front of the whole nation. I think that was very unprofessional, and I think he did take the combative way too far at some points.